A warship built to win wars, vanished into the deep ocean. In under 3 hours, 193 men never came home for 77 years. Nobody knew exactly where she was. Then one January morning in 2019, a sonar screen flickered and everything changed. But here's the question nobody asks. Was it really the torpedoes that sank her? Or did the people who built her seal her fate long before she ever faced the enemy? The answer is buried 14,255 feet below the surface. And it will change the way you think about every decision you make for the rest of your life. Welcome to Deep Wave Discovery, the place where history's deepest secrets rise back to the surface. Now, before we go any further, if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, think of it this way. You know that wise old neighbor, the one who always had a story worth sitting down for, the one whose words you wished you had written down. Subscribing to Deep Wave Discovery is exactly like that. Every single story here is one you will want to remember. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and do not let these stories pass you by. And one more thing, drop a comment right now. Tell the whole Deep Wave community, where in the world are you watching from today? Whether you are watching from New York, London, Karachi, Sydney, or somewhere in between, leave your city below, because this story deserves to be heard by the entire world. In the early 1930s, the world's most powerful nations sat down at a table, not a battlefield, a negotiating table. They called it arms control. They called it peace, but what they actually created was a system of invisible constraints that would cost hundreds of men their lives. A decade later, the Washington Naval Treaty had set strict limits on how many warships each nation could build. And more specifically, how much those warships could weigh. Every ton counted. Every decision had consequences. And the United States Navy was running out of room. After constructing the Yorktown-class carriers, two powerful, well-armored, and carefully engineered vessels, the Navy looked at its remaining treaty allowance. Just 15,000 tons left. Not enough for another full carrier by conventional standards. A wiser institution might have stopped there. Saved that tonnage, waited, but the Navy chose differently. They decided to squeeze one more carrier out of what remained. And so began the construction of USS Wasp, a vessel that naval architects would later describe in quiet, professional language as cautionary tale. Her keel was laid at the Four Rivers Shipyard in Quincy, Massachusetts. She was launched on April 4, 1939, commissioned on April 25, 1940. On paper, she appeared formidable. 741 feet in length, capable of carrying 71 aircraft, a top speed of 29.5 knots. But paper does not tell the whole story. To fit a fleet carrier's capabilities into a hull 5,000 tons lighter than her sisters, the designers made cuts, brutal, systematic, and ultimately fatal cuts. Her armor protection was reduced to a minimum. Her aviation fuel systems had no redundancy built in. Her firefighting infrastructure, the very system designed to save her in a crisis, was dangerously underpowered. Fewer pumps, thinner water lines, less compartmentalization between sections of the ship. She was the only vessel of her class, a one-off, an experiment in doing more with less. And here is where the lesson becomes uncomfortable for anyone running an organization, managing a team, or building a business today. USS Wasp was not built to fail. She was built to perform, but performance without survivability is not strength. It is a countdown. The Navy celebrated what she could do. Nobody asked loudly enough what would happen. When things went wrong, there is a dangerous moment in the life of every organization. When everything is working. When the results are impressive. When the praise is loud. When the leadership feels untouchable. That moment It's precisely when the hidden cracks grow deepest. USS Wasp entered that moment in the spring of 1942. She had spent her early months in the Atlantic, escorting convoys, conducting patrols, doing the quiet, unglamorous work of a warship finding her rhythm. Nothing spectacular, nothing historic. But then, the assignment changed. The island of Malta was bleeding, positioned in the heart of the Mediterranean. Malta was one of the most strategically vital pieces of land the Allied forces possessed, and the Axis powers knew it. German and Italian bombers had been hammering the island relentlessly, destroying airfields, crushing supply lines, and systematically eliminating its air defenses. Malta needed fighter aircraft, desperately, immediately, and USS Wasp was chosen to deliver them. In April 1942, she sailed toward the Mediterranean carrying 47 Royal Air Force Spitfires, launching them from a distance of over 600 miles. At the absolute outer edge of the fighter's operational range, it was a logistical feat that many considered borderline impossible. She pulled it off. The Spitfires reached Malta. The island's defenses were reinforced, and in London, Winston Churchill himself took notice. He did not simply send a formal acknowledgement. He personally requested that USS Wasp make a second trip. That is the kind of validation that builds legends. In May 1942, during Operation Bowery, Wasp returned, this time delivering 64 more Spitfires alongside the British carrier HMS Eagle. The aircraft reached Malta. The Axis bombing campaign began to lose its grip. Historians would later credit these missions as a turning point in the Mediterranean air war. By any external measure, USS Wasp was performing at the highest possible level, decorated by results, requested personally by Churchill, trusted with the war's most critical supply missions. But underneath that performance, nothing had changed. The thin armor was still thin. The inadequate fire suppression system was still inadequate. The dangerous aviation fuel lines were still unprotected. Success had made those problems invisible. And that is the oldest trap in the world. When results are strong, institutions stop asking hard questions. They stop stress testing their systems. They stop looking for the fracture lines running quietly beneath the surface. USS Wasp transferred to the Pacific in June 1942, not as a compromised vessel, but as a decorated hero. The enemy, however, does not read decoration certificates. It finds weakness, precisely, mercilessly, and in the waters off Guadalcanal. Weakness was exactly what it found. Most people believe that disasters arrive like storms, loud, visible, with enough warning to take cover. They do not. The most catastrophic failures in history arrived on calm days. Clear skies, quiet water. September 15, 1942 was exactly that kind of day. The sea around Guadalcanal was glass smooth. The afternoon sun sat high and undisturbed. Wasp moved through the water at a steady patrol pace, her crew managing the routine business of a warship between engagements. Aircraft on deck, fuel lines active, ammunition stored and ready. Nothing suggested what was coming. Beneath the surface, however, something was watching. Japanese submarine I-19, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Takeichi Kanashi, had been tracking the American task force with extraordinary patience. Kanashi was not rushing. He was calculating, waiting for the geometry of the moment to become perfect. At 2:20 in the afternoon, he fired 6 Type 95 torpedoes in a single spread. 6 weapons moving silently through calm water, toward a ship whose design had already made the decision about what would happen next. 3 of them found USS Wasp. The first torpedo struck forward on the starboard side, directly adjacent to the aviation gasoline storage tanks. The second hit amidships, rupturing fuel lines and igniting stored aviation fuel instantly. The third slammed into the engineering spaces at the rear of the ship. All 3 impacts within seconds of each other. And here is where USS Wasp's hidden compromises stopped being theoretical. The ruptured fuel lines, the ones with no redundancy built in, spilled thousands of gallons of high-octane aviation fuel across multiple decks simultaneously. The explosions severed the ship's water mains, the thin ones, cutting all pressure to every fire hose aboard. Electrical power failed almost instantly. Pumps went dead. Ventilation fans fell silent. Within minutes, the hangar deck was a furnace. The crew fought with everything they had, but without water pressure. They were fighting fire with empty hands. Flames spread forward and aft simultaneously, consuming aircraft, ammunition, and compartments that were never properly sealed against exactly this kind of breach. Secondary explosions tore through the ship as ordnance cooked off in the heat. Captain Forrest Sherman, standing on a bridge filling with smoke, understood what his ship's designers had never publicly admitted. There was no margin. There had never been a margin. He gave the order to abandon ship. Just 40 minutes after the first torpedo struck, 193 men never made it off, trapped below decks, caught in the initial explosions, lost inside a ship that was built to perform, but never truly built to survive. That evening, USS Lansdowne fired 3 final torpedoes into Wasp's hull to prevent capture. At 9 o'clock that night, USS Wasp rolled quietly to starboard and disappeared, taking her secrets, her wounds, and her men. 14,255 feet, straight down, for 77 years. She waited. No memorial marker, no coordinates confirmed, no closure for the families who never stopped wondering exactly where their fathers, brothers, and sons had come to rest. The deep ocean keeps its secrets differently than the land does. It does not erode evidence. It does not scatter remains. Simply holds everything in cold, pressurized, perfect stillness. And 14,255 feet below the Coral Sea, USS Wasp was being held exactly that way. In 2018, the research vessel Petrel, funded by the estate of the late Paul Allen, one of the most quietly consequential figures in modern exploration history, began a systematic search of the Guadalcanal campaign wreck sites. The Petrel carried technology that did not exist in previous decades. Autonomous underwater vehicles equipped with side-scan sonar capable of mapping the seafloor in extraordinary resolution. Remotely operated vehicles carrying high-definition cameras built to function under pressures that would crush conventional equipment instantly. The search grid was vast. The depth was unforgiving. The Coral Sea weather, unpredictable. But on January 14, 2019, sonar screen changed everything. A large contact appeared on the display. Sitting upright, flat-topped, enormous. The dimensions matched a carrier. The team deployed their remotely operated vehicle and watched as it descended, slowly, through more than 2 miles of black water. When the lights finally reached the wreck, there was silence in the control room. The flight deck stretched out before the cameras, remarkably intact after nearly 8 decades. The island's superstructure was immediately recognizable. Aircraft wreckage still sat on deck, corroded but unmistakable. And there, still clearly readable on the hull, the number 7. Forensic documentation confirmed everything. 3 distinct torpedo impact zones on the starboard side, precisely matching I-19's attack record. Additional damage on the port side, consistent with Lansdowne's scuttling torpedoes. The flight deck layout, elevator placement, gun spawns and positions, all matching Wasp's 1942 configuration exactly. The U.S. Navy officially confirmed the identification. USS Wasp was found. But what the wreck revealed went far beyond historical confirmation. The damage told a story that after-action reports never could. The forensic evidence showed precisely how 3 torpedoes, in 3 seconds, unraveled every compromised system simultaneously. Naval architects studying the wreck confirmed what Wasp's loss had first suggested in 1942. Survivability is not optional. It is the foundation everything else is built upon. Every carrier designed after Wasp carried that lesson forward. Thicker armor, redundant fuel systems, stronger firefighting infrastructure, better compartmentalization. The post-war carrier, in many ways, was built as a direct response to everything USS Wasp was not. Under the Sunken Military Craft Act, USS Wasp is permanently protected as a war grave. No salvage. No artifacts removed. No commercial interest permitted anywhere near her hull. She rests exactly where she fell. And for the families of 193 men still entombed within her, the discovery did not reopen a wound, it closed one, because now they know exactly where home is. USS Wasp served just 18 months, but the lessons encoded in her wreck have shaped every warship built in the 80 years since. The most expensive education is always the one paid for, with lives, and the most dangerous organization in any era is not the one facing the enemy. It is the one that never honestly asked, what happens when things go wrong? USS Wasp had the answer. At 14,255 feet, in perfect, preserved, silent detail.